My parents promised me the house and then gave it to my brother. My parents said it my whole life, over and over again. We don't differentiate between our kids. They said they loved us equally. They said everything would be fair. And for the longest time, I wanted to believe that, especially when they promised me the house. They didn't say it casually, they said it clearly. That one day, it would be mine. I believed them enough to act like it was already settled. I paid for repairs without being asked. I covered property taxes when money was tight. I showed up when things broke, when paperwork needed signing, when they needed help. I thought that's what family does. Then one afternoon, my brother called me. His voice sounded light, almost happy. He thanked me for being cool about the house. I didn't understand what he meant at first. I asked him what house. There was a pause, a short one. Then he said, "Dad transferred it to me, I thought you knew." That was it, no meeting, no discussion, no warning, just a decision made quietly, without me in the room. In that moment, everything clicked, all the little things I ignored, all the moments I brushed off. I finally understood where I stood in my own family. Not equal, not chosen, just convenient until I wasn't. We were a middle-class American family living in Atlanta, nothing dramatic on the outside. A normal neighborhood, normal schools, normal dinners around the table. My parents worked hard, paid their bills, and cared deeply about how we looked to others. From the outside, we looked like a perfect family. Inside, the balance was never even. My parents always said they treated me and my brother the same, but growing up, I felt the difference in quiet ways. The kind you can't argue about, because there's no proof. Just a feeling that follows you everywhere. I was a mediocre kid, not terrible, not special. My grades were average, sports never clicked for me. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't invisible either. I just existed in the middle. My brother, on the other hand, shined in every room. He topped his class. He was captain of the basketball team. Teachers admired him. Friends surrounded him. At family gatherings, people asked about his future. When they asked about me, the conversations ended quickly. I learned early how to shrink myself. When college came around, everything became clear. My parents took out loans without hesitation to send my brother to Yale. They called it an investment. They spoke about his future like it was guaranteed. When it was my turn, they chose a local county college. No loans, no discussion. They said it made sense, I didn't fight it. Part of me already knew I wouldn't win. I went, studied, graduated, and stepped into a normal job at a small firm. Nothing flashy, just enough to support myself. That's when my parents started pushing me to settle down. Marriage. Stability, status. I didn't listen. I moved out. I chose independence over approval. And from that moment on, the arguments never really stopped. After college, the pressure started quietly and then grew louder with time. My parents began asking questions that didn't sound like questions at all. When was I going to settle down? Why was I still working such a small job? Didn't I want a better life? They compared me to people my age who were already married, already promoted, already somebody. Every call turned into a lecture. Every visit felt like a performance review I never passed. I tried to explain that I was okay. I paid my bills, I lived within my means, I didn't need much. But to them, comfort without status meant failure. When I finally moved out, things got worse. They said I was running away from responsibility, that I didn't have direction, that I was wasting my time with no clear future. They worried more about how my life looked than how it felt. Meanwhile, my brother's name came up constantly. His job, his salary, his achievements. Every conversation somehow circled back to how proud they were of him. I felt like a reminder of what they didn't want. The tension hit its peak the night my brother came home for dinner. It was supposed to be casual, just family. But once again, the praise started flowing toward him. My parents talked about his success, his discipline, and his future. Then they turned to me, same questions, same disappointment. Something in me snapped. I couldn't keep swallowing it. I told them how small they had made me feel my entire life. How they gave him chances and gave me limitations. How they called it fairness, but it never felt fair. Their response cut deeper than the years of silence. They said he earned it. He deserved the investment. I didn't. That was the moment I realized they didn't see me as equal. They saw me as a bad bet. I left the house that night shaking with anger, not loud anger. The quiet kind that settles in your chest and doesn't leave. I didn't call them. I didn't answer their messages. For 2 months, there was nothing between us. No updates, no apologies, just distance. Part of me felt guilty, but another part felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to them. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mom. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. My father had collapsed, a stroke. He was unconscious in the hospital. Everything else disappeared at that moment. I didn't think about our fight. I didn't think about the past. I just went. I rushed to the hospital and sat there, watching machines breathe for him. My brother couldn't come. His job wouldn't give him time off. That's what they said. I stayed. When my father was discharged, someone needed to take care of him. A nurse was too expensive. Without thinking, I stayed. I took time off work. I helped him walk. I fed him. I cleaned him. I slept lightly, afraid something might happen while I wasn't looking. Days turned into weeks. A full month passed like that. No complaints, no praise, just duty. One night, while I was helping him back to bed, he looked at me differently. Not like the child who disappointed him. Like someone he depended on. He told me he had been wrong. He admitted they never gave me the same value they gave my brother. He said they thought I wasn't brilliant enough to succeed, so they invested everything in the child who showed promise. They believed my brother would take care of them in old age. Then his voice broke. He said, "But you're the one here." That was the first time in my life I felt seen by my father. And then he said something that changed everything. He told me he wanted to transfer the house into my name, just mine. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew it wouldn't end there. My father had regrets, but my family had patterns. When he recovered and I returned to work, I started visiting regularly to check on his health. That's when the pressure returned, but from different directions. My father told me he had originally planned to split the house equally between me and my brother. Now he wanted to change that. He said my brother was doing well and didn't need it. He said I deserved something for once. A few days later, my mom showed up at my office unannounced. She asked me to talk my father out of it. She said it would destroy the family. That my brother would never accept it. I told her I wasn't asking for anything. Whatever my father decided was his choice. She didn't like that answer. Then my brother called. He said the house should be split evenly. When I said the same thing to him, his tone changed. He warned me there would be consequences. I brushed it off. I thought he was just angry. I didn't know he was already planting seeds. My father believed his time was limited. He wanted me married before he died. My brother used that fear. He told my father I was careless, that I had no goals, that my friends were bad influences. He said I took time off work because I didn't care about my career, not because I cared about my father. He convinced him that giving me the house would be a mistake, that I'd sell it, ruin my life, and end up with nothing. Then my father called me over. He said he still wanted to transfer the house to me, but there was a condition. I had to get married within a month and a half. He said it was his last wish. I told him I was single, that it wasn't possible. He said I could think about it. Days later, my parents called me again. They said they had boys in mind. People from their circle. They wanted me to meet them. My father cried. He begged me to fulfill his wish. That's when I realized something was very wrong, but I was already trapped. A few days after that conversation, my parents asked me to come home again. This time, the tone was different, softer, calmer. They said they had people in mind for me to meet, boys from their circle, sons of friends, people they trusted. I didn't argue. I felt cornered and exhausted, like saying no would only make things worse. I met 2, then 3 men. The conversations felt forced and empty. I couldn't connect. I couldn't picture a future. I felt like I was being passed around as a solution to a problem instead of being seen as a person. Still, my father kept reminding me of his health, his fear, his time running out. Every word felt like a weight on my chest. Then, during my father's 58th birthday gathering, I met Michael. He wasn't part of the original plan. He was my mom's friend's son, visiting from out of town. We talked casually at first. About work, about life in Atlanta, about small things that didn't feel heavy. For the first time in weeks, I felt normal. We met again 2 days later, then again the day after that. The conversations felt easy. He listened. He asked questions. Within 2 weeks, we started dating. It all happened fast, faster than I was comfortable with, but everyone around us seemed relieved. Our parents were happy. They said it felt right. Soon, the pressure returned, stronger than before. Both families started talking about marriage. We told them it was too soon, that we needed time. They nodded but didn't stop. Then my father's health declined again. He was hospitalized, and fear took over everything. I started thinking about last wishes and regret. I prayed that if he recovered, I'd agree to the marriage. When he was discharged, Michael and I told our families we would get married, quietly, without a big ceremony. They agreed. My brother flew in for the wedding. He asked about Michael casually, like none of this affected him. But inside, I felt something slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. As the wedding day got closer, doubt filled every quiet moment. I started asking myself questions I was afraid to answer. Why was I doing this? Was I really choosing this life, or was I being pushed into it? I barely knew Michael. He was kind, but kindness alone isn't a foundation. I wasn't excited. I wasn't happy. I felt numb. I stayed in bed most days, staring at the ceiling, replaying every argument, every sacrifice, every moment I felt second best. My mom and brother handled everything. The venue, the catering, my dress, the guest list. I wasn't involved. It felt like the wedding was happening around me, not for me. I took a week off work, but not to prepare. I was angry. Angry at my parents for trapping me emotionally. Angry at myself for agreeing. I felt like my wedding, the one thing that should belong to me, was being used as a bargaining chip. I kept thinking that if I went through with this, I'd lose myself completely. On the morning of the wedding, I didn't feel nervous. I felt empty. I got dressed without excitement. When I walked down the aisle, something inside me finally broke. I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't say yes just to make everyone else comfortable. When the officiant asked me, I said no, not loudly, not dramatically, just no. Then I turned and ran. I went straight to my apartment. My phone exploded with calls and messages, but I didn't answer. My father was furious. He said I humiliated them on purpose, that I ruined the family's honor. He said if I had doubts, I should have spoken earlier. Within days, he transferred the house to my brother and removed me from the will entirely. Later, my mom told me the truth. My brother had convinced my father to do it. He said giving me the house would ruin my life, that I'd waste it, that I wasn't capable, and my father believed him. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. That's when I understood something painful. In many families, equality is just a story they tell themselves. Some children are trusted. Others are tested. And no matter how much you give, it doesn't always change which one you are. After everything settled, after the anger cooled and the noise faded, I found myself sitting alone more often than not. Not crying. Not raging. Just thinking. Thinking about how much of my life had been spent trying to earn something that was never meant to be given freely. I replayed every moment where I tried harder, stayed quieter, accepted less, hoping one day it would balance out. I realized how deeply I had believed that if I proved my worth long enough, someone would finally choose me. But families don't always work that way. Love isn't always distributed by effort. Sometimes it's decided early, silently, and never questioned again. I stopped blaming myself for not being extraordinary. I stopped apologizing for being average. I understood that my value was never tied to a house, or a will, or my parents' approval. What hurt wasn't losing the house. What hurt was losing the illusion that fairness would eventually show up if I waited long enough. My brother didn't win because he was better. He won because the system was built around him from the start, and I wasn't wrong for noticing it. I was wrong for ignoring it for so long. Walking away from that wedding wasn't courage in the moment. It was survival. I didn't save my relationship with my family, but I saved myself. And that mattered more than any inheritance ever could. I learned that sometimes being the lesser child teaches you something the favorite never has to learn. How to stand alone. How to rebuild without applause. How to choose yourself when no one else does. I don't hate my parents. I don't hate my brother. I just no longer chase a version of love that only exists on conditions. Families like to say all children are equal, but that's not always true. Some children are invested in. Others are expected to understand. If you've been the one expected to understand, to wait, to sacrifice quietly, know this. You're not broken. You were just raised in a system that needed you to stay small. And the moment you stop shrinking, everything changes. If this story felt uncomfortable, it's probably because it felt familiar. There are a lot of people walking around carrying silent roles they never agreed to play. The responsible one. The patient one. The one who's supposed to understand. If you've ever been that person, I want you to know something. Your worth doesn't come from what you're given or denied, it comes from what you protect. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from expectations that were never fair to begin with. If you want more stories like this, stories that say what families don't like to admit out loud, subscribe and stay here. You're not alone in this.